Next, a portion of Book TV's monthly 3-hour live program, In Depth. On the first Sunday of each month, we invite one author to discuss their entire body of work and take your calls. In Depth also includes a visit with the author to see where and how they write their books. That's what you're about to see.
This is my hideout. This is my writing hideout. This house was built in 1740, and whenever people come up here who are a little more, have more money than I do, or a little more conventional, they'll say, the first remark is, you could really do something with this house. But I've never done anything, so. This is important. This sign's very important on my door, because FedEx and UPS and companies like that have this terrible habit of leaving notes on the door saying, you weren't here, we couldn't deliver. And people are always sending me, a lot of teachers send me long, heartfelt writings about the challenges they're facing in the classroom, or they'll send me a whole thick envelope of letters that their kids wrote to me if I visited their class. And I don't like having to go and all the way back to the airport in Boston to retrieve these things. So I put this here and I sign it. So I figure if they want a signature, they can rip this off and leave the package. This is a glorious kitchen. This is all there is. That's the kitchen. I think this was once a woodshed, but it's fine for me. This is all mail that I haven't answered, that I haven't caught up with yet, that's come in the past month, you know. I try. This was once a dining room, but it's been taken over by notes for one of the 2 books that I'm working on now. This is all like early manuscripts, revisions of my last 10 books, or last 8 books probably. And it's not organized at all. You have to just sort of use your intuition to arrive at the right spot if you want to find the book you want. It's not alphabetic or anything. Well, this is the only respectable room in my house. This is the living room. And I'm actually not in here all that much because I'm usually working in the back room, which is my office. And there are only 6 rooms in this little house. And you'll see the ceilings are very low because I guess when it was built, people weren't as tall as they are now. And that I got a what do you call those things? High definition TV, solely to watch the Red Sox. That's the one thing I do completely for fun is, apart from jogging out in the woods, which I love to do, is to follow the Red Sox. But the Yankees have been destroying them lately, so I've given up on them for a while. So I retired the new TV. This is where I just hang out and read, do research for the work that I'm doing, or just read to relax. I still read a lot of, well, my reading's kind of, what's that fancy word, eclectic. It's very eclectic, because on the one hand, I love sort of the traditional canon of literature that I grew up with and learned when I was at Harvard and later at Oxford when I was living in Paris. So I still read a lot of Auden, W.H. Auden. He was at Oxford when I was there. I love Auden. I love Rilke. but only in this translation. If I read it in a different translation, I don't like it as much. And I read a lot of. I'll still go back and immerse myself in books from the civil rights era. This is one of Taylor Branch's volumes on Dr. King. But frankly, to be honest, I spend a lot of time reading children's books. I love, when I'm in classrooms often, what happens is the teacher will, I'll look at a book and I'll say, oh, that looks interesting. And the teacher will say to the class, should we let Jonathan, they call him Mr. Jonathan usually, should we let Mr. Jonathan have his own copy of that book? And so they give me a lot of these books. This is a wonderful one, by the way. A sixth grader gave me this book, a little girl in the Bronx, The Giver, by Lois Lowry. It's very reminiscent of Orwell, of George Orwell of 1984, but actually I think it's more subtle, less heavy-handed. It's a beautiful book. Actually, adults like this book as much as children do. I just crash out here and lie down. Sometimes I'll literally lie down sometimes, and just grab something at random off the table. And when I need sort of strong nourishment, it's not political at all, and has nothing to do with all the injustices we face. I'll just go through the Norton Anthology of Poetry, and I particularly like, you see, I mark everything I like. I particularly like the Elizabethan period, and read John Donne for a while, or some of the sonnets of Shakespeare, or Auden. Auden is my modern favorite, I would say. Yeats, Auden, and Rilke, those three poets, to me are like, I don't know, they're my soul food. There's a little girl I wrote about in 3 of my last books. I called her Pineapple. That was a nickname. And it was in the South Bronx. I met her when she was in kindergarten. And she's this wonderful little girl. She's this bossy little girl who always used to give me instructions. She's very worried that I live alone, and that she always tried to fix me up with her teachers and things like that. She's like my social counselor. But she drew that picture for me once. And I asked her, I mean, it's a sun, obviously, but you can't really tell. That was yellow originally. It's faded, I guess. And you can't really tell if it's rising or setting. So I asked her, I said, is that a setting sun or a rising sun? And because her life was very much in doubt at that point, her future, because she was going to what probably was at that time the worst single public school in New York City, possibly the worst elementary school I'd ever seen in 40 years. She had like 7 different teachers in 4th and 5th grade. They kept coming and leaving, quitting. So it was not at all clear whether her sun was rising or setting. I try not to read metaphors into simple things, but she was a little older. I brought the picture back to her, and we sat down. She was maybe 6th grade by now, 5th grade, and I said, "Did you mean that to be a rising sun or setting sun?" And she looked at me real hard and she said, "You decide."